So you want to know how to continue your personal growth? In this video, I'm going to share 3 things that you can focus on that will make massive changes to how you show up in the world, your experience of the world, and of life. So if you've seen me ever before talking on one of my videos, you've heard me share about the massive transformation that I've undergone in the past few years. And as I was thinking about this question of how to develop yourself, how to continue your personal growth, I thought about it really for me, it's come down to 3 core things that I did and that I continue to do every single day. It comes back to 3 things: stories, strategies, and states. So let's start with stories. Now, stories, the way I'm using the word, means something very different from the way we normally use this word in our popular vernacular. When I use the word story, I'm talking about an unconscious story that we've made up based in our past. So I'll give you a couple of examples. A story, if someone, let's say a woman, has a really terrible experience with a man who cheats on her and lies to her and betrays her, right? She might make up a story that all men are dogs. And generally, most of the time, we actually make up stories between the ages of 0 and 7 years old. And it's these stories that we make up at a really young age that end up coming back and showing themselves over and over and over again. So for example, if we're a little kid and we find that, for example, our parents don't like to watch us sing and dance, we might make up a story that we're not good singers or we're not good dancers. So the stories that we make up at a young age are especially powerful because sometimes we grow up with these stories and they become such a deep part of us that we don't even realize that these stories are running our show. I'll give you an example from my life. You might find that this is relevant for you too. As I grew up, the stories that I developed around money were very much tied to my upbringing. Generally, as children, we have 2 major influences on our lives: our mother and our father. Now, some of us have siblings, some of us have cousins or uncles, aunts, foster parents, whatever. It can be anyone that was very involved in our upbringing as a child. So in my case, it was my mother and my father. And my story about money was heavily influenced by both of them. My father is a Cuban immigrant, and his family, when he was 15 years old, lost everything. So my dad became very attached to money stability and security. It became very important for him that he save money and not spend it a lot. So my story that I inherited about money from my dad was that you have to protect it at all costs, and that a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And when you get money, you have to be really, really careful with it because it could get pulled out from under your feet and you could lose everything in an instant. Now, the funny thing is, my mother, on the other hand, had a very different story about money. The story about money that I inherited from my mother was more about spending. So in her experience, in her childhood, she learned that money could come and go at any moment. So when you had it, you should spend it and enjoy it. So can you imagine these 2 parents, right? These are the 2 stories that I operated in. Ended up happening from a personal development perspective for me is I struggled with money for a long time. I struggled because I had a feeling that I had to hang on to it really tightly, and I was very scarce about it. But when I had it, I just wanted to spend it. I just wanted to go shopping, and I would find myself doing these huge shopping sprees that I couldn't really afford and often getting myself into debt. So the story that I made up about money is something that influenced my life. And we make up stories about everything. We make up stories about friendship. We make up stories about love. We make up stories about money, about career, about success, about achievement, about every single thing in our life that matters. You probably have a story about it. And so one of the first and most important things that I can invite you and encourage you to do on this journey of self-development is examine your stories and start to become aware of what your stories are. So I invite you to write down a list, for example, of all the different areas of your life where you're finding challenge or struggle, and then look at what are the stories that you created from the ages of 0 to 7 years old, and how are those stories showing up for you now. The second part I mentioned was strategies. So again, this is a word that I use very differently in this context than what we use in the outer world. The concept of strategies is, what are the ways that we learned to survive in the world? Again, from the ages of about 0 to 7 years old, we learn certain ways of being in order to get our needs met. Now, we don't know from 0 to 7 years old that we're not in a struggle for survival and that things are not all life or death. But as a young child, it can seem like even small things take on big significance and big meaning. So at a young age, we can take on strategies to get through, to get by, and to survive. I'll give you an example. As a child, we moved around a lot. We moved around multiple times between when I was born and when I turned 12 years old. So a strategy I developed in order to survive all these moves was to, whenever I'd get to a new school or a new situation or summer camp or whatever new environment that I was in, and I felt like I didn't belong, I would seek out the most popular girl and I would befriend her. So a strategy that I developed over those years and that I didn't realize until a few years ago I was still employing was a strategy of being number 2. A strategy of being not outshining the number 1 queen bee woman. And so what I recognized, and this was a huge aha moment for me, when I recognized that I would always try to minimize my accomplishments whenever I was around a really strong female. So this was a strategy I developed to survive because I believed that if I outshone her, then I wouldn't be her friend anymore, and then I would lose my status and my belonging. Now, I'm not saying that these strategies make any sense, right? Or that the stories make any sense. All I'm saying was it was a big realization for me when I realized that subconsciously I didn't feel safe if I was the top dog, if I was the number 1, if I was shining brightly, and that I always tried to underplay my abilities and my talents until I realized this. So I invite you to consider what strategies have served you really, really well in life that potentially are also limiting you. I've seen strategies like, for example, overachieving is a strategy sometimes to belong or to get love or to be accepted. Some strategies might be to be super physically fit or to look really good so that you can walk into a situation and feel confident, right? So a lot of times strategies look like really good things on the surface, but when we start digging, we realize that they're rooted in lack of confidence and insecurity. And then the final piece, the third layer, the third element that I think is crucial and critical to personal development is states and awareness of our physiological, mental, and emotional state. So this is how we feel, how we're showing up. And again, this is something where outside looking in, other people can often see our emotional state, our physical state, our mental state better than we can sometimes because we're so in it, we don't have a lot of self-awareness sometimes. So I invite you to think about, how are you feeling in this very moment? Do you feel excited? Do you feel energized? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel nervous? Are you depressed? Are you sad? Are you curious? Like just starting to check in on a regular basis with how do you feel, and starting to use this distinction that I learned from Donnie Epstein of energy poor, energy neutral, or energy rich. Like when we're in an energy poor state, everything sucks. Nothing feels good. Everything is a struggle. Everything is hard work from an energy poor state. When we're energy neutral, no big deal. Yes, no, maybe, whatever. But from an energy rich state, we're empowered and things are fun and exciting, and we can feel curious about challenges instead of feeling brought down low by challenges. So just keep in mind that your state often impacts how you experience life. When you're in an energy rich state, life is going to occur in an energy rich way. And when you're in an energy poor state, life's going to occur in a way that's not quite as fun. So when we can start to be aware and intentional about how we're feeling and about our state, then everything shifts. And without going into too much detail about what that means, I'll probably take that up in another video. Being intentional about your state, there are things that we can do to become more energy rich. I personally love to dance. And when I dance, I feel more energy rich immediately. And in fact, a lot of these strategies and stories, strategies, and states, Tony Robbins talks about them. And if you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event, then you'll know that a big part of the event is just teaching you how to get in a more energy rich state through dancing, through loud music, through high-fiving people and giving people next to you a massage. So those are the 3 things. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, then consider downloading my Monetize Your Magic playbook so that you can build and grow a business that's more aligned with who you really are, what you really love to do, and the impact that you want to make in the world. Just click on the link below to download that immediately.